So, yeah, and I think a certain, like I say, a certain degree of embarrassment. I mean, it's a ridiculous notion that because of the job I do, I ought to be able to sort it out.
Yeah.
You know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that, the embarrassment and the shame side of things?
Well, I suppose as a psychologist, my particular approach, I'm really quite enthusiastic about non-medical approaches. I'm very skeptical about the use of medication and the value of psychiatry generally. I don't have a lot of respect for that. So the thought of having to consider medication, there's an element of defeat about that, and that as a psychologist, again, you're used to kind of trying to be helpful, and so yeah, I suppose there's a certain amount of stubbornness really in coming around to accept that I was not doing okay, and that I didn't really like the idea of that being expressed or visible to other people. Yeah. I mean, shame is a strong word, isn't it? But I mean, that's what it is, I think. I mean, I guess shame, embarrassment. Yeah. And it's the idea that somehow you've lost control over some important things, like your own thoughts and feelings. But yeah, I didn't have any particular worries about how people would respond.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think people would be particularly unkind or unhelpful or anything like that. So yeah. Yeah, can't think of anything else really to add to that.
Sorry. And in terms of you seeking that help, you said it was quite difficult, but you did go to your GP. Was there any other forms of support that you did seek or that you were receiving at the time?
Well, I certainly benefited from psychotherapy in the past.
Okay.
So I think I did contact my old therapist, but I guess there was some delay about when that was going to be possible to see her. But yeah, I did that as well.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of other help, I mean, not really, I guess. Yeah, I think I maybe spoke to one or two friends about it, but not in any great depth, really. Yeah.
What was it like for you? Like you said, you found sort of psychotherapy beneficial in the past.
Yeah.
What was it like for you accessing that support?
Well, that was good. That was a positive experience. I mean, somebody who I knew, who I trusted, and who I felt I could talk to about difficult stuff. So it was a bit of a logistical nightmare because it took an hour to get there, and then there's the cost. But but also going there, there was a realization that it wasn't going to be one or two meetings sort of thing, and that it would take some time to process and work out stuff, and that meant more discomfort really. It's just that thing about not wanting to look at something really, because it's going to get messy and unpleasant, and you have to face difficult feelings.
What was that like for you, knowing you had to face those difficult feelings?
Well, Well, I was conflicted, really. On the one hand, I didn't really want to do it, but on the other hand, I knew it was necessary. So sometimes I'd feel a bit more inclined to do it, and other times not. And I suppose that's how it works in the end with psychotherapy, isn't it? You do it at your own pace, in bite-sized pieces. Well, hopefully, I guess, unless you're completely overwhelmed. But in fact, I can't remember where I heard the phrase now, but somebody was talking about grief and depression. They were saying the best you can hope for is that it comes in bite-sized pieces, and that stuck with me really as a phrase. So you can process it, but I guess there were times when it felt it wasn't bite-sized pieces, it was very big pieces, and hard to swallow, if we're going to stick with that metaphor. So it was conflicted, really, I suppose.
And throughout that process of going to the GP, accessing therapy for it, and going through that bout of depression, do you feel it affected your work in any way?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, there were times when I felt my work was better. I think when I was doing some therapy, I remember on a couple of occasions that I felt a bit more tuned in to some of the emotional stuff. But then other times I felt like I wasn't really engaging with some of the meetings I was in. And like I said, at times I was more coasting along, really, rather than getting to grips with things. Mm-hmm. So, it's not a terrible thing to do from time to time. It's not a great thing. So, yeah, I don't think I made any major errors or major mistakes. But I think there were probably some days I should have stayed home.
Mm-hmm. And were you ever off work?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But probably, let me think. Yeah, a little bit, not as much as I probably should have been. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess if I'd had a better relationship with my manager and I'd been encouraged to be off work, then I would have probably done that. Yeah. Although then, you got to explain it, haven't you?
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Which bit?
Just in terms of, like you said, if you had a better relationship with your manager and felt more supported to be off work.
Yeah, well, I suppose because it's a delicate thing to speak about. I mean, I think the quality of your relationships with people, it determines what kind of conversations you have. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was not an everyday conversation. And I think there were times with my manager where there was some tensions in our relationship. And so acknowledging that kind of vulnerability, I suppose, didn't feel like an easy thing to do. Mm. And although I didn't think she was going to do anything horrible or terrible, my instincts were not to really share things readily. Also, when I did meet with her, it always felt rushed. Okay. She was often late. We had a whole lot of things to get through, and a lot of them were not really my agenda, they were hers. So again, for something that needed a bit of thought and care and time, it got squeezed out, really. Alongside me being reluctant to speak about it as well.
And you said something about vulnerabilities as well, and I was just wondering if that's how you did feel.
Well, yes, very much. I think I felt wobbly, really. I didn't feel very good, and felt a bit delicate.